Well, my name is Rjan Halberg. I'm working since retirement in cancer research and especially epidemiology things. And before that, I've been working in reliability engineering and quality management and also environmental management within telecom business industry over the years since the 60s. In that, I learned a lot about statistics, and it turns out that I can use that instead of looking at printed circuit boards and electronic products. I can look at people and see how their failure rates are, so to speak. Let's see if I can move on to next. Yes, perfect. The object of this presentation is I will address public health trends and also try to pinpoint causes, possibly making it possible to look further on to the future. More specifically, I'd like to elaborate on the influence of our very important immune system and cell repair system. What happens if we suddenly start to play around with that? Because the reason why we don't everybody have cancer right now is basically because we have, and you have, a good immune system. You have repair systems that take care of damaged cells. But if suddenly the government or somebody decides that we should introduce something new into the whole country that is disturbing this immune system, what will we see in the trends? That is the question. Some milestones, and I'll go back to 1955. Because we see some examples here. The expected life among men, it had been increasing all over the years since the beginning of the 20th century, and suddenly, especially for the men, after 55 it didn't increase anymore. And we also saw that cancer rates started to increase. People died from cancer at higher rates than ever before. Another important year is 1997. It turns out that the countryside, who always was very good to live in, suddenly became unhealthy. And the number of people sick registered started to increase. It's possible also to pinpoint a month in different parts of Sweden anyway. And later we can see now that face melanoma is increasing among younger people, and newborn babies have much more heart failures than ever before. But let's go back to 1955. Well, I'll just mention that these cancer rates started to increase in areas that got the new FM and TV stations put up. In Sweden, it took about 10 years before all the country was covered with these. So some parts of Sweden did not see this increase because they didn't have the FM radio system yet. They had to wait up to 10 years. And oddly enough, it was the mortality that increased first, and then the incidence of new cases. And finally, we started to go to sun chartered trips to get more sunburned. So the mortality in melanoma could not possibly be increased due to our traveling. Here you can see the, I see if I can pinpoint, yeah. Here you can see how the men, the expected life of men suddenly stopped increasing more or less in 1955. And then 30 years later or 25 years later, it starts going up again to catch up with women. Today, women in Sweden is about 83 years old in the average before they die, and men around 79. In Japan, women are up to 90 today, but this odd plateau, I will come back to that. You can try to think what happened there, maybe. I'll give you one clue, that is smoking. This graph is from 1998. I saw a paper, Aftonbladet, who brought up this very odd curve, wrong one. A curve showing some thing called incidence, the number of new cases per year and 100,000 people increased from a low level in 1960 and high level about 95, and I wondered why. This looked like when we in the telecom business got into trouble. Failure rates normally go down because you find the first bad boards or bad equipments the first year, and you repair them, and the failure rate is normally going down, and after 4 years you don't have any failures at all, more or less. But in a few cases we had problems where the curve went up like that, and that is a problem that can cost 100 million Swedish crowns to call back boards from all over the world, for instance. So I got interested in that. What does that mean? We must have a problem with melanoma. Malignant melanoma is a skin disease that you really don't want to have. So I started to dig into that. Looking into the statistics showed that 1955 again, the number of deaf people who died from melanoma started suddenly to increase in Sweden. It took 3 years about before the number of new cases, people who hadn't been ill before, suddenly got the cancer. The yellow ones are the one who died from it. So they had had cancer before, but they stayed alive. But suddenly they started to die in 1955 to a higher and higher rate. And if we look at what happened that year, well, we placed all these radio and TV stations around Sweden. It goes up like that. In 10 years, we had 100% coverage, more or less. And we can see the same year the number of new deaths, number of deaths in melanoma increased. Later, the number of new cases increased, and finally we can see a graph showing the number of charter trips to Mallorca or whatever. Because in the article I read, some experts said that the reason why we get melanoma is because we are so much in the sun, but it's the wrong order in this diagram. Well, radio and TV. Do you remember Radio Luxembourg? Not many do, I think. That was my pop music channel at that time. I was 13 years then, and it worked best at night. A bit of rain wouldn't do any harm. Good music then. But the wavelengths for an AM station, that was, no one remembers that, 208 meter. So that's a long wavelength. What do you think about FM radio then? 100 megahertz or around, that is what we have. And that the wavelength for FM radio is around 3 meters, and so half the wavelength is about the size of your body when you're sleeping. So it fits very, very well. They couldn't have chosen a better wavelength if they want to hit us. I said that some counties did not suffer from this until 10 years. So I looked at I looked at the statistics before and after the year we got the FM radio in Sweden and different parts of Sweden, and those who did not have it, they stayed on the same low mortality rate all these years until they got the FM radio. And then they all went up mathematically very clear way. And that is not a sunshine story, so to speak. Much of these graphs have been published in papers, in scientific papers earlier. I put the reference up here. And if we look at lung cancer, I mentioned that before. Suddenly, we know the number of deaths in melanoma started to increase in Sweden to 55, and the same applies for lung cancer deaths. And if you look at the scales, you have 400 up here, you have 4,000 there. So for every melanoma death or skin cancer death here, you have 10, sorry again, you have 10 lung cancer deaths in Sweden. In Norway, they have 8 lung cancer deaths per melanoma. Actually, they have more melanoma than we have. So that can also be explained. They have higher output power from their FM radio stations, actually. They accept 250 kilowatt, and we accept, and Denmark accept maximum 60. But anyway, and in Denmark, there is 13 lung cancer cases per melanoma death. And you smoke a bit more than in Sweden also. So, if we take a look at old smokers, actually old men, they have a very, very clear graph showing these are 80 and 85 years old people. Suddenly 55, they got lung cancer. They had been smoking all their lives before, but that was just healthy for them. They didn't get any diseases more or less before that, but after then they had to pay with their life for all their smoking they had been doing before. You see here how fast it goes up, and it took 30 years almost before all those old smokers had died off, more or less. So we came back to a more normal curve, which goes like this way. I won't go into detail, but it shows very much that something really hit the old guys. This is graphs showing mortality for a number of different diseases, all showing how it is increasing for most of them about a factor of 10 when it comes to mortality relative the level 1955, except for one, and that is stomach gastric cancer. That works completely the other way around, and something in the environment was apparently good for the stomach cancer. In the Western countries, we see that all over. So more research is needed there. Maybe it's something good also with our environment. The same picture for women as well. Well, WHO, World Health Organization, they say that the body absorbs up to 5 times more energy from FM radio and TV than base stations. They compare just to show that mobile phones, etc., are absolutely of no problem from a health consequence. But and they say that radio and TV have operated for over 50 years without known health consequence. That is not exactly my picture of it. And this is a graph showing that this frequency around 100 megahertz really is the one that you should pick if you want the population to really absorb as much as possible. So that was not a good choice really to use as our radio system. Yeah, I mentioned that before. And another thing, when you're in a horizontal position, you're sleeping. If you're sleeping every night, which we all are, you may be, your bed may be in the direction towards the E field. That means the currents are going back and forth in your body and disturbing your immune system, who should actually try to listen for crying cells that have been damaged or are not really healthy. They are crying for help. But instead, this immune system has to listen to pop music from FM radio. It's not easy to do the job then. This is Sweden, of course, and you can see the main transmitter is tighter here and more densely placed than in the north part. If we calculate the energy from all those, you get a map, energy map like that, and you can compare with it with the melanoma map here. It fits very well, except for that one, but it has an explanation, because in Norway on the other side there is the Halden transmitter, which is a very strong one, and it's not used in my calculation here, so everything has an explanation. When I look at the statistics, it was very, very clear that if you are surrounded and your bed is surrounded by, say, 3 or 4 different FM transmitters, one from that direction, one from that, and one for that direction, where should you place your bed? It's high probability that you are placing your bed in one of those dangerous directions. If you have only one dangerous direction, one direction to the transmitter covering where you live, then it's only one bad direction of your bed. So the likelihood that you are in resonance is much less. And you can see that on this graph, the incidence in parts of Sweden where you have only one transmitter is much lower than you have in parts where you are surrounded by 4 or 5. It's a mathematical, very, very, very strong probability that this is just a coincidence is 1 in a million. And it's not only melanoma. If you look at breast cancer, we can see the same kind of statistics. If we look at the 21 counties in Sweden, you have lower incidence of breast cancer in those areas where you have covered or covered only by one transmitter. So, and I took a look at Norway. The picture is exactly the same. And I took a look at Finland. The red areas here are areas covered by 3 or more FM radio stations, and the same melanoma map to the left fits very well again. And you can on the web also see how this map developed over the years since 1960, close to these transmitters. Another odd thing with melanoma is that it seems it's most commonly found on areas that are not exposed normally to the sun. It's not so much in the head or hands as it is on other places where you are wide, actually. And if we look at the head is here, that the incidence, that means the number of new cases per year, has doubled roughly on the head area, but on the rest of the body, it has gone up almost 20 times since 1955. You can see that. That particular statistic is from Women's Statistics. I think it was Norway, also published. Now, we're coming into a very important part, that is the bed. I mentioned that before. It's important that it is not directed towards the FM transmitter. It's important that it's not actually acting as a radio antenna. And if you have a metal spring mattress, that is a radio antenna. It can reflect and cause standing waves that is nagging on your body night by night, hour after hour, and disturbing your immune system. And well, this is something you should avoid, really. I looked at the use of metal spring mattresses in different parts of the world, from Japan and China, Russia, Australia, Sweden, Eastern Europe and USA, around 70%, and just a few percent. And the breast cancer incidences follow that line very clearly. If you want to avoid breast cancer, avoid spring mattress. That is actually my own. When I made that diagram, I understand that I must do as I say. So I took it away to the city dump in September 2009, yes. And I should also mention left-sided cancer. One odd thing is that cancer for the skin or breast cancer is more prevalent on the left side than on the right side. How's that? Well, the heart is on the left side of the body, and that makes elderly people and, well, many, I tend to sleep for longer times on my right side than on the left side. That means that the left side is a bit up from the mattress, close to the metal, the incident and reflected waves, they cancel each other, so there is no strong fields very close to the metal. But if you go up a bit, they tend to cooperate instead, both the incident and the reflected waves. So the fields are much stronger a bit above the metal than close to it. So it's very natural that we should see graphs year after year after year. The left side has more breast cancer than the right side. And that is exactly what it should be if you're sleeping on a radio antenna. That is Maxwell's equations. And if you look at statistics, is it good to sleep for many hours or for few hours? While in the Western countries, it's really a bad idea to sleep for 10 hours because you have higher breast cancer risk, even melanoma risk, if you sleep for many hours compared to if you sleep only 6-7 hours. But in Japan, where they don't sleep on metal mattresses, they have the futoner, and plastic things and so on. Then it's just it's just healthy to sleep for a long time, of course, because your immune system is working and can do their job for 9 hours. It's much better than do it for 6 hours. So everything fits very much together. And if you look at melanoma incidence in different countries, every dot is one country here. You see that countries with high melanoma incidence also have high breast cancer incidence. It fits together, so there is a common cause actually. I should just mention also that these radiation things are acting not only on and affecting our defense systems for cancer, it also seems to affect the growth hormones. So you grow faster when you are young in these countries where you have bad environments from this point of view. So, sorry. Yeah, we can look at Sweden, for instance. If you have low levels of low incidence of melanoma in Sweden, every dot is one commune, then you are in average shorter. If you look at the average height of the people, and it applies both for men and women. It's very strong statistics here. The probability that this is just a coincidence is equal to 0, I would say. And then I mentioned, to start with, something happened also in '97. I'll have to keep an eye on my watch here. Say goodbye to countryside goodbye when even healthy people die. Put on that ABC book. It had another title actually for the letter G, but what we see is that in October '97 suddenly people started to get sick in Sweden. We had a very good statistics going down with a smaller and smaller number of people health registered as sick until October '97, and then it went up very, very clear, and it peaks in the winter time. It goes down a bit in the summer when we get the D vitamin and things, and so something happened there. We see that also on the long-term sickness. People who are sick more than 1 year started to go up. And at the same time, we started to use these new mobile phones, the two dual bands phones. So it was possible to look at different districts in Sweden to find out exactly which month did it change from this downgoing curve to this upgoing curve. And in Stockholm, it was, I think it was October 97. And other areas, it was up to January 98 when they got sicker. And I tried to get information about when did we roll out the 1.8 gigahertz system for the dual band phones. And I got the answer that that information was classified. They wouldn't let me know. But I know that it was exactly in this period of time. PTS, for instance, say when they started and so on. So it fits very well together. I said the countryside now today is not as healthy as it used to be. This graph shows the yellow is measured 2002. At low density, that is the countryside, you have high number of sick days, and it's better to live in the town. Earlier it was the other way around. It was better to live in the countryside. You were healthier there. But it's changed. And there is an easy explanation, actually. If you live in the countryside, you have probably bad coverage from your mobile phone system. And that means that if you have bad coverage, then your mobile phone has to shout very high in order for the base station to hear you. So those who are using mobile phones in the countryside with bad communication to the base station, they get this 2 watts into their ear all the time. While in the Stockholm area, maybe it's only 2 milliwatts, 1,000 times better. Could be so. And we can see on the statistics for health that both in Denmark and Norway, the connection to coverage from the mobile system is very, very strong. It's a lot of such statistics. And in 1997, a lot of health parameters started to go the wrong way. So it fits with the total picture we had before. And we're not alone in Sweden. I got a graph from Switzerland showing exactly the same things. People started to get sicker, different diseases, as I mentioned here. An example is prostate cancer in Stockholm. If we look at people old, between 50 years old, 50 to 59, suddenly after 97, it boomed. And it cannot be explained by the use of PSA testing, because PSA testing that started to be used in 91 actually. So we should have seen something happen in 91 if that was the explanation. But nothing happened until suddenly. And mortality, people who had been living but maybe in dementia suddenly started to die off in 97. So that is a very bad year. Brain tumors suddenly goes up. Norway, Sweden. If we look at sensitive people, that is old people. As I said earlier, old people are very, very valuable because they die so easily. They are sensitive to environmental changes. Guinea pigs. But when we started to drive like this, with one hand, because the other one was busy, we also started to hit one or two people on the street, walking over the street, etc. So the number of injured people suddenly started to increase dramatically in Stockholm area, where I took this. Exactly the same as the drivers were driving this way. It's not a good idea to... Maybe we have got used to that and learned by all these mistakes, but it was expensive anyway. I looked at the statistics over how many people are electrosensitive. Not in Sweden only, we looked at all sorts of statistics, reports from different countries, and earlier days it was in the order of 0.1% or less in the 80s who said they were sensitive to electrical fields. But over the time the numbers published increased, and the latest number I got from, it was an inquiry of 3,000 people, about 30% of them said they had some form of problem. So I just drew a line through that, and in 4 or 5 years we will, every other people will, 50% of us will have some sensitivity to electrical fields. I made a study together with a guy from Spain, Balmori, on not humans but birds. He had been doing lots of studies and walking around in areas and counted how many sparrows did he see in different areas. It was a large work, big job he had done. I only helped him with some statistics. And it was very clear, it was very clear that the birds, they like to be in areas with low field strength, and areas where the mobile phone mast or whatever was strong, then there were very few birds to look at. So the summary of that part is that the health of the population is actually at stake, and some areas are worse, and we should really investigate in detail. This guy thought he had made a very good idea here, but I'm not sure the lady in the tube likes the idea as well. We'll go on here. So what's happening right now after 2000? Well, we have got more radiation in the air, 3G. Today we're rolling out 4G with even higher frequencies. And we can see, for instance, if we look at melanoma in the face, in the head area, for young people or people younger at least than 60 years, and at my age I say these are young people. And they had been showing a very stable level of melanoma around 0.7 up till 2003 or 4, but now it's going up. So something is happening here, and statistics points also that it's increasing more on the right side, the right ear. I saw in a paper that if you look at people, which side you use your phone on, 67% had it on the right side, and I'm not sure. Could easily do a survey on that. Brain tumors that is a difficult area actually, because brain tumors take so many years before they develop. So it's a long latency time there, but we can see trends going in the wrong direction there also. In Norway, with all their mountains, maybe. Autism is increasing quite parallel to the use of mobile phones in different age groups. And business is booming in the drugstore. They sell sleeping pills to the babies, almost to young people. It's a big business, and it goes up like this. The sales exactly as the number of hours we spend with a phone, mobile phone. So there are lots of graphs showing correlations, and we would like to have more money to really dig into this and have expensive tests being done. I can only do things that is more or less for free, looking at the internet and so on, collect data. Sleeping problems, like the birds, they didn't like fields in the above 1 volts per meter. And if we look at sleeping problems and check their rooms where they sleep, we can see that people who sleep in such an environment, they have also very difficult to sleep. So your bedroom is a very important place. Another bad graph showing how hyperactivity is increasing in parallel to the use of mobile phones and so on. Throat cancer starts to increase more than it has been before, after 2000. This picture shows how blood is affected by the use of mobile phones. Normally, the blood cells look like that if you put it under a microscope. But if you put up your mobile phone and use it close to the same samples, they tend to clud together, and that is a problem. For instance, for babies, unborn babies, when the mother is talking, which they always are, in their mobile phones, then the baby's heartbeat goes from 120, which is a normal level, to 140. So that's it. They get a good condition, maybe good runners, but in the worst case, they can also get hurt from it. And we can see that now, that the normally less than 1% used to be born with heart failures, but today almost double of the number of babies born have in Sweden heart problems. And that's because the mothers are using the stomach as a good place to put their iPhone on, or iPad, I don't know. It never ends. Diabetes type 2 shows going up again, very strong. Diabetes type 2 is where the cells have problems in getting insulin into the cell. So it's not a problem with the production. That is not affected. It's the insulin type 2 is going down as we would like to see, but we are affecting the cells in a way that they had problems to take care of the insulin that is outside it. So that is, and it has been shown that this capability is affected by radiation. This is some experiment how it looks like before and after. But of course, we always get these reports from the authorities saying that there's no problem at all. This is in Swedish. And we haven't found any health risks at all, they say, year after year. So 2000, we see lots of health problems. I will try to... No, I have more. Okay, good. Thank you. So we see serious signs of health problems among unborn babies, fetus it's called, children, youth and elderly of course. And I'm quite astonished why the authorities don't do almost anything. They should react on this data. Well, we'll now try to see what will this lead to, what will happen in the future. And I have been doing work on statistics in many different areas, trying to get out interesting information from data that is available. Back to my work at Ericsson and so on, I used to look at failure costs and guarantee costs from electronic failures. We had lots of data. We knew, of course, how much we had sold all over the world, and we got things sent back to us to be repaired or replaced. So we had a lot of statistics, and the databases were really useful. The problem was that almost nobody was using it. People were working with collecting the data and putting it into databases, but nobody was using the real data. But I started to do that and developed applications of how to analyze all that data, of how much we had sold and how many failures we have got. Always growing population, we sell more and more, and we get some more and more failures. How can you calculate the failure rates out of that? But it's possible to do that with some matrix methods. So I used, that was developed as a master thesis work actually to make it really fine-tuned. And later on I found out that I could use the same application, a big and very efficient Excel application, to analyze data from information on the number of mad cows in England and the number of mad Englishmen. That's a number of years back now, but they were really afraid what will happen. So I looked at the number of eaten mad cows. It was possible to calculate how many they had slaughtered and eaten up. And then we had some statistics showing the number of Englishmen who got ill in the mad cow disease. So I could analyze this data, and I calculated in '97 that that in 2005 or so, we will have about 160 dead Englishmen. Sent it into Lancet as a paper, and they answered that while real scientists, they say it can be anything from one handful to millions. You can't say it is 160. Well, in 2004, I counted that it was 164. So I was wrong. Traffic deaths, I've been analyzing using the same type of application, skin melanoma, sunshine in combination with a disturbed immune system. Lung cancer was quite recently published. Alzheimer mortality that suddenly pops up. Earlier they had Alzheimer but didn't die as fast, but suddenly they turn out to die from it. This is myself a few years back. Like now, due to treatment, I have not the hair I'm used to be. In a few months, I hope to get my hair back again. But at that time, I had no hair until I was 2 years old, I think. And my mother put a lamp shield on me to protect me from this dangerous sunshine. I don't think it was dangerous at that time at all, but she thought about me anyway. This is a life matrix I've been using when I do the calculations. I want to do very much of detail, but the basic principle is that you look at the damages, maybe this skin damages from the sunshine, you get 1 year, and then you follow just those damages, how they possibly by time develop into cancer, but only from those. And then next year, or in this case 5 years later, you have new damages that can maybe develop into cancer and so on. So then by adding downwards, you can get the number of calculated cancer cases year by year. So simple, actually it is. It's an Excel graph. And that is used. So you need to know about how many damages you get every year, maybe from the sunshine or whatever, and you need to know about the cancer risk and how that increases by time. Hopefully you have a good immune system that can repair your damages so it's balanced and you stay healthy. But if you don't repair at the rate you really need, then you will get cancer. It's so simple. So this is the basic risk function I'm using. That is, it takes maybe many years before the risk is going up. And then you have hopefully a good immune system that repairs within a short time, so it eats up the risk, so to speak. So the repair eats up the risk, and you will end in a low cancer risk totally. You understand that? So, but what happens if we get an environment that delays the repair work? The repair system has to listen to the pop music instead, or crying cells, and it's not a good idea. Then you can calculate easily again by multiplying that to get the estimated failure or cancer rates. I calculated for different birth cohorts how it should look like, and you see that was 2007. 1 year later, there was a report from USA telling exactly what it was. So I had actually calculated how it should look like 1 year before. but I had, of course, data in background. It just shows that my model worked very well. And if we, again, these valuable elderly people, if we look at the old men and women for melanoma, I take melanoma because it's so very clear kind of disease. I haven't personally been hit by melanoma, but it was that first graph, you remember, that turned me on. And if we look at old men and women in all the Nordic countries, the graph is increasing exactly like an exponential function. And it will continue to do that until all these 80 years have been living since 1955 all their lives, or at least from their 15 years of age when they started to sleep on metal spring mattresses, I guess. Again, modeling work fits very well with this is the exponential function used. It's a very simple formula, and it fits real data very well. So it's useful to predict. What's that? Okay. Again, quite recently published work on melanoma mortality, and it shows different ages, that all ages initially after 55, they started to increase exponentially because it's a logarithmic scale, exponentially. But when all in that age, the low age group here, had been living all their lives in the same environment, of course, they should have the same incidence. But the older group had to live for 10 more years before they reached a stable level, and so on. And the oldest, they are still increasing and increasing, and will do that until about 2020 before they flatten out. So it's quite a simple explanation of all these data. Just another example of lung cancer and melanoma for women are exponential. But if we look at lung cancer for men, older men again, I love these statistics. You can see that the smoking habits, they had cut down on smoking actually from 33% average over life down to 23 here, but their lung cancer incidence did not, they didn't have much of lung cancer before 55 because it wasn't dangerous. It was probably only healthy to smoke. Some doctors in the 30s said that it's good to smoke because your body will be accustomed to take care of scrap. So it's good to smoke, they said. But after 1955, it's not so good idea anymore, and they suddenly started to get lung cancer until, again, all these old smokers had died off, and we are flattening out to the more normal level. And again, the mortality graph, if we compare the melanoma graph with its scale here, it's a pure exponential function. But for lung cancer deaths for men, we have this punishment addition before they get into their normal type of exponential function here. So all these extra deaths were caused by all the smoking they did long before 1955 in that area. Because the smoke and chemicals rests in the lungs. So when you start to destroy your immune system, then it suddenly becomes dangerous. It's very simple. I just mentioned something about ongoing work, a simplified melanoma model. Actually, that's been published. A deeper study on etiology of lung cancer. You have seen some of the graphs. Hopefully, if I can get some funding for next year, it will be a bigger study. A paper that has been accepted and is in the press right now is about the connection between a disturbed immune system, a disturbed hormone systems, and growth hormones. I say here a tall population is a sick population from a statistics point of view. You have more cancer in countries where people are long, tall. And especially if we look in Sweden in different communes and compare these 300 communes with each other, we see that you have more cancer in the communes where the people are tallest. And the last paper, just 2 days ago, I got also a message from the journal that it was accepted, had got good ratings from the reviewers, and it talks about sleeping time and breast cancer and melanoma, and explains why in Western countries it's not a good idea to sleep on these metal spring radio antennas, because you get more breast cancer and other cancers as well. So my best advice is just to get rid of that spring mattress. It's not a popular phrase for the bed manufacturers, actually. We'll see what's happening. That is some graphs from that new paper showing very strong correlations to sleep times and average time you have been resting in body resonant fields. Model work, I talked about that. So just to summarize now, in 1 minute. In 1955, the immune defense system became disturbed, and we saw cancer rates increased, and especially so in the areas where you have several, 2 or 3 or 4 FM radio stations from different directions. The high output from mobile phones in sparsely populated areas had a strong influence on sickness statistics. And 2001, we see that, for instance, skin tumors in the face on the right side more often become malignant, and we see babies nowadays are born double as often with heart problems. And in a few years, maybe half of every other people will feel that they would need to move out into the forest or somewhere. So thank you very much for your attention. I listed here some of my web pages. The main is hir.nu. If you want to get in contact or a copy or something. In Swedish, hudcancer.nu, and mobilstop.nu. I provide some EMF testing also, sgll.nu. I'm also interested in climate modeling, actually, and is working on a study there in sealevel.nu. I have also an anti-cancer foundation. So thank you very much.